Hey, good morning, and welcome to the Comix Experience Graphic Novel Club for Kids. Our July pick is Rickety Stitch and the Gelatinous Goo. And we are really, really lucky to be joined here today by James Parks and Ben Costa, the creators of this awesome book. Hi, welcome, guys.
Hi, thanks.
Hello. Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah. So, it's a great book. You guys, well, you haven't read it because you just came in and just got it. But do you guys read it and did you like it? Yeah. It was funny, right? Yeah. Nice. So tell us a little bit about where the book came from.
I mean, it's very influenced by us playing Dungeons and Dragons together.
I was going to ask that question.
We started playing in like 4th grade, and we've been playing with a group of friends like all our lives consistently. So that's probably where the kernel of it started.
And when he says 4th grade, we actually met in the 2nd grade.
Oh, wow.
If you can believe it.
Oh.
And have been making stories and having fun and playing games together ever since.
That's cool. What led you guys to want to do comics?
What led us to want to do comics? So I've been a comics fan as long as Ben has, like forever. We first discovered comics with Spider-Man and Usagi Yojimbo, and used to draw comics together when we were on the playground. Like we would use crayons and draw Spider-Man comics together. And it's really been a big part of my creative life is reading and absorbing and devouring comics. Yeah. So it's only natural that we would want to get together and make them.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the same answer for me. My brother got me into comics. He was collecting, in the early 90s. And I started reading Ghost Rider, which was like way over my head. But like looking back at those issues now, I don't know if it was really meant for kids, but
no, I don't think so.
Yeah. And so in high school, we wrote a comic together. Someone else drew it, but that kind of got us going. And then in college is when I started actually drawing comics.
Yeah. So what's your guys' process in doing Rickety Stitch? How do you start?
Well, it definitely starts out with what we love to do, which is tell stories. We really, really like to build worlds and write mythology and tell stories. And so the first step for us is really to get together and do what we call the Great Riff, where we tell the entire book story to one another and discover different plot lines and character development, all that stuff. Really in a period of 24 hours or 48 hours, we just kind of tell stories to each other. We laugh, we cry, we come up with all of it. And then from there, we begin the outlining process where we really delve deeper into what makes the characters tick. And then scene by scene and the dialogue and how do they speak, what do they look like, then begins working on concept art. And we work together to come up with unique or new ways to tell a familiar tale. And then Ben, he gets to work on beautiful thumbnails, which walk through the entire story.
They're pretty rough.
That's why they're thumbnails.
Yeah. I think they're beautiful.
Yeah, we write a full script together,
okay,
and then move to the thumbnails. And for this, like before working on this, I would kind of just go page by page, but the publisher wanted all the thumbnails at once.
Right.
So I did that, and it worked. It works out. I think I'm probably going to keep doing that. You get a whole view of the book, and at that point, you're kind of like really figuring out the pacing of the book. You're sketching out each panel, kind of make changes from the script, because no matter how hard you try, like if you write a full script, I feel like there's
inevitably there will be changes or
a translation that needs to happen.
Sure.
So some pacing gets worked out. Like I'll have to stretch out the page count just to make room for certain actions and stuff, like action scenes. really need to be decompressed sometimes.
So you said that you guys write the script together. How does that work? Are you like trading drafts, or are you like literally sitting in the same room writing it together, or
we're either in the same room
or on a Skype call,
Yeah.
and we share a Google Doc.
Okay.
And because of our unique relationship of having known each other for 20 plus years, we'll literally finish each other's sentences or just go from line by line, character by character, description to description. And it's actually a pretty quick process for us. We do it relatively quickly.
Cool. That's interesting. So you're doing it you're not like on the Skype call going, okay, and then he says this, or are you?
We definitely are. Yeah. What if this? What if that? How about more like this, less like this? And we know each other so well, and our vision for what Rickety Stitch is so in tune with one another that we have no barriers for just telling the complete story and getting to the best, most interesting things.
It was clear to me reading this that you have many more Rickety Stitch stories in your heads.
Yes. Yeah. Next summer will be the release of book 2.
Okay. How far do you think you're gonna go with this? Sales permitting.
As far as possible.
Right.
We have 6 books planned.
Wow. Okay. Wow.
Currently we're going to put out 3 books. So we'll see.
We'll see.
How fully formed is the 3rd book?
We were just talking about it on the way over in the car.
We spent the hour working on it.
Cool. That's
I mean, it's all outlined.
Yeah.
But there are going to be a lot of changes when we actually sit down to write it.
Right.
Yeah. So when you start drawing, Ben, what's your process like when you face that blank page? Like, are you? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, having the full scripts really helps. I feel like we get it to a point where I don't need to be intimidated by the blank page.
Right.
Sometimes there will be a moment where the script just doesn't feel like fully fleshed out or something, but that's pretty rare.
Or if it's like a relatively complex action sequence. Ben is actually really good at tension and action sequences when he draws. So that's a huge benefit, I think. But we've definitely had discussions about there's a lot of things happening in these 2 pages. How is it going to get done in 2 pages?
Yeah. And sometimes since I'm spending a lot of time looking at the script and drawing, I'll notice oh, this seems to be off. I'll call up James and be like, hey, we should maybe add something, add a scene here or whatever. So, I work completely digitally. So I move I sketch out thumbnails with a pencil on a piece of paper, just have a rough draft of the page. And then I have a Wacom Cintiq where I draw directly on the screen. I use Manga Studio 5 to draw and ink the pages. Usually that takes me about a day just to draw and ink a page, and then another day to color it in Photoshop and letter it, give or take. I mean, sometimes it takes less, sometimes it takes more, depending on the detail of the page. And yeah.
So 6 months-ish or so to do the art?
Yeah, longer than that. Okay. I'm never as fast as I want to be. Right. 2 days on a page would be ideal, but it's always hard to maintain that for 200 pages.
Sure.
So we're looking at about 1.5 years for this second book of actually drawing it, which would be my fastest ever. Usually it's 2 or 2.5.
Okay.
So I feel like I'm getting faster, but when I first started drawing comics, I was painfully slow.
Right.
As I feel like I was pretty late starting on the journey of saying, oh, I can be a comic book artist.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, it almost looks to me like the coloring would take longer to my eye than the actual illustration in a lot of the cases. You know, because you've got a lot of gradations, you've got a lot of depth and a lot of things going on there.
Yeah, it depends. Definitely when I first started coloring, it was the longest process, but I think I've gotten faster. And it really depends on how many, characters are on a page.
Mm-hmm.
Like currently in the second book, it's like full of crowd scenes and giant like fights, and
Right.
it's taking much longer. Like I long for the days when it's just like 3 characters in a forest.
The lettering is obviously it's computer lettering, but the singing font in particular, is that like based on one of your handwritings, or?
That's all. Originally, when we first started, I was writing in cursive.
Right.
It's actually pretty close to Ben's handwriting.
Okay.
So we to find something that fit and was still really legible and could
Right.
be scaled.
Yeah.
Like I hand lettered my previous comic on The Wandering Shaolin Monk, which I put out 2 volumes, self-published, and I just got to the point where it was taking too long, and like by the end of the second book, I was feeling some tingling in my wrist.
Mm.
I think it was primarily from lettering, so I'm not going to do it anymore. I hand letter like sound effects and stuff like that.
Yeah. The tingling's gone now?
Yeah, it was because my hand got so tight.
Right, yeah.
Like,
The
doing
lettering,
lettering.
I can see
But he's
that.
got like Popeye arms now.
Do you have like a cartoon anchor on one of them?
Yeah.
That would be cool. Hello. Does anybody in the room? Do you guys have any questions about the book, or anything you wanted to ask or say? Or no?
Don't be shy.
Yeah.
I'm Ben.
I'm James.
That was it. That was your only question. No, that's.
Ben is the tall one. I'm the short one.
Mm-hmm. When you pitched this book, what's the process like in pitching a graphic novel like this?
So we put together outlines for all 6 books,
Mm-hmm.
so that they could see our grand plan for the series. And but the process to getting to that point was we connected with a friend cartoonist who had an agent.
Mm-hmm.
And that agent took a look at what was our entire story, the different books and the outlines. And then from there, he just shopped it to different publishers and editors to take a look at it and see if it was something that they were interested in. And Random House was interested in a fantasy series, a graphic novel series, and we kind of fit right up with what their expectations for what their next big thing would be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it was very cool. We got lots of great feedback from Dan, our agent, and from Random House and different editors, really.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of it looks like a book report, sort of.
Mm.
It's like a book report for a book that doesn't exist yet.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's an interesting way to think about it. An agent. I think you may be the first guys that I've spoken to that have talked about having an agent. Most creators are just doing it completely on their own.
I feel like it was a big changing point when we got an agent.
And we got Dan is great because he gives us lots of great feedback about the story, and he really engages with Rickety Stitch and everything that we want to do with it. And certainly for me, it was a nice step to have someone else, a third party's brain, involved a little bit in. Okay, this is our dream. This is our great thing that we want to make, and having a third party look at it and say, okay, we love this and that, and we'd love to see other things too.
Did he go, I didn't like this part, you got to change that?
Occasionally, like he'll say, oh, more like this, less like this,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll pitch a solution for that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's good. It's good though.
We have a question.
Yeah.
Here's a real one.
Yes.
So, which one is your favorite character in the book?
which is your favorite character in the book and why?
I have a soft spot for the gelatinous Gooey. I feel like he can go unnoticed maybe, but he's got the emotional core maybe. I don't know. He kind of anchors Rickety Stitch a bit.
Because Rickety Stitch can be kind of goofy.
Yeah. I just like their dynamic, sort of like a C-3PO R2-D2 thing going on.
Yeah.
Where he says, snarky comments, but you have no idea what it really is.
Right.
Yeah.
I like Rickety Stitch. I like the idea of him trying to discover what he wants to do with himself and who he wants to be, because I feel like all of us sort of go through something like that. We want to know what we want to do with our time and who we want to become. And so I've always liked Rickety Stitch for that reason. Did we create any characters on our own?
Individually, I think.
Individually. I think maybe here or there, but I think really it is sort of a mashup of, because we do kind of tell each other the stories to come up with everything. I wouldn't even be able to tell you.
Yeah, like even if someone has an initial idea, like the other person builds on it.
Right, and we kind of riff off of each other until we've fully formed a character or a place or whatever.
So how much or was any of this from your D&D campaigns?
None.
Yeah, none of it. Maybe like the tone of it.
Yeah, the tone of it. We like the cartoony kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But no,
but nothing
actual
specific.
characters.
So neither of you played a bard?
We've played bards, I think.
Yeah, we. One of our other friends was the bard, but he was very unlike Rickety Stitch. He's actually the character that we are going to base on his character is going to be a villain.
Oh, okay. Does your friend know?
Yeah,
yes. He's really excited about it.
Cool. Yeah.
How did you come up with gelatinous goo? Like, why was that Rickety Stitch's best friend?
That's a good question. Why is Rickety Stitch's best friend the gelatinous goo? So there's a couple of answers to that. One of them is that we really like the idea of a character that couldn't speak like we speak. And Rickety, who doesn't have a lot of friends because he's a skeleton, it made sense to us that he'd have a friend who really wouldn't be anyone else's friend either. So they're both kind of outcasts. No one really understands either of them. Also, it's a homage to Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, like fantasy lore, like those oozy type of creatures are usually giant, like unintelligent monsters, and we wanted to kind of twist that a bit and make a really smart, tiny little creature.
Plus, it seems to me with the goo, it's the kind of character that kind of can only exist in a comic book, because it'd be very difficult to do that in prose or in a film.
Yes. Yeah.
Because there'd have to be some sound in a film. There'd have to be something.
So we have an idea, for a cartoon, if that ever happens, in the Looney Tunes, where there's like a silent character, it'll have sort of orchestral sounds, like when it moves,
like slide whistles or cellos, and
so that might be an option.
Yeah, because he's a little bit like R2-D2.
A little bit,
yeah. I mean, we imagine that he's making squishing sounds and all sorts of stuff.
That's cool. What was I was really struck by the black and white, the tone pages from his dreams. What was your inspiration for switching back and forth between color and black and white like that?
So originally, I was going to do the whole book in black and white, and so we had started and stopped a few times with this comic, some false starts, but I had drawn maybe like the first 10 pages, which remained fairly the same. And I was in black and white, and I was resistant to doing color because I knew it would take longer. But
I remember you started doing color concept designs.
Yeah.
And it was really inspiring for us both when we saw it in color.
And everyone thought it looked better.
And everyone thought it looked great, but we still wanted to have like some of the old black and white to it. And because the black and white is applied to the dream sequences, it's a nice visual indicator that is this real, or is this a dream? Did this happen to him? It's murky. It's murky. And then it switches to color, which is like turning the lights on it. Mm-hmm. And it's like, this is what's happening right now. And so it was just a simple but cool way to pay homage to wanting to do the book in black and white, but to also establish.
And, when I tried to color those pages, it just didn't look right to me.
It didn't have the same impact.
Because of the toning?
Yeah. I feel like the toning gave it a different feel.
And when I say toning, I'm talking about the dot pattern that's there, that's active. Just making sure you guys know.
So yeah, we just were like, this would be cool if these sequences were black and white.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's a really strong effect, and it really stands out, particularly because the color in the rest of the book is so vivid. To have, because a lot of people do kind of muted colors, but you have just such bright, shiny colors everywhere. To compare that with the black and white is really interesting. The song that's Through the Dreams. Do you have music for it?
We do.
You do?
Yeah, actually, at the back of the book, there's a link that you can go to hear the song. And our friend Evan Wolverton. Yeah,
right there it is. There.
Yeah. Our friend Evan Wolverton, we tasked him with putting the entire song to music, and it's like sort of an epic bard's tale, so it's a 9-minute song.
Right.
It was really difficult to because we're not musicians inherently. We liked the lyrical language, but we needed someone with those skills to put it to music, and Evan did a spectacular job.
Mm-hmm. Spectacular. But this process was like totally at the end. We had just started. We looked at it as more of a poem because we couldn't think of a melody to put it to.
Yeah, and he reached out to us relatively randomly, and it gave us the idea, like, hey, Evan, do you want to give this a shot?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
it's interesting you wrote a song without knowing that it was a song, and then it became a song.
Well, we knew it was a song. We just our minds couldn't
we couldn't put it to music like a professional musician could. And we hope that there are more of them soon.
Be different songs in the different books?
Yes.
What's book 2 called?
It's called, I don't know if can we tell it?
Why not?
It's called The Middle Route Run.
The Middle Route Run.
Okay. All right.
Sort of like Cannonball Run.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
It's filled with high adventure.
It will make sense when you read it.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Mm-hmm. You use a variety of techniques, Ben, in here. I'm particularly thinking about some of this water and like the fog effects and things like that. Is this just a filter? How do you do this kind of stuff? Because it looks almost like there's something on the page.
It's a combination of textures and just playing around with different brushes in Photoshop. And then tweaking, making color adjustments.
Ben has
like
an
a
amazing
whole
eye for that
combination
stuff.
of that. So, sometimes it takes a while to find the right thing, and it feels like coloring especially sometimes feels like alchemy. Like you're just like mixing stuff together, and it can feel like, oh no, this isn't going to look good, but you just stick with it, and at a certain point it starts to shape.
What's the editorial process like? I mean, do you have an editor who is going through this stuff with you page by page, or they just send us the pages and it's pretty much all good?
So we do have an editor, and what we do is they read the script first. So they read the outline and the script, so they have the complete understanding of what it is we're attempting to do on the page. Then we send them the thumbnails, and through there they're able to visually follow the script and see where it's at. after that, Ben sends batches of finished pages, like 50 at a time-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And once they see the final art, they'll make suggestions. It's usually pretty light suggestions because there's a lot of stuff before that, so they know where we're going. And we can make any edits early on before he gets to final art.
Mm-hmm.
So far, it's been a pretty easy experience. We kind of had freedom to do what we want.
Mm-hmm.
In the first book, there were only a couple instances where we had to redraw a couple pages.
Right.
But by the time we had come to Random House, I think 130 pages were already in the can.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So
almost a complete book at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Do you feel like the people at Random House editors there, like, do they actually know comics, or are they prose people who have gone sideways in that?
So our editor does know comics
Okay.
and is a massive Dungeons and Dragons fan.
Oh, nice.
So
Okay.
there's no, like, nothing is lost in translation
Right.
when we present something to
Yeah.
it. So that's been great. It's been great.
I always wonder, like, because every book publisher, like the mainstream book publishers, are all publishing comics these days, and I'm like, where did they find the editors? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
it takes training and knowledge to figure out how comics work.
Right.
And it's different than prose. It's fundamentally different than prose.
It is. I think what's happened is just the ecosystem is sort of mixing together now.
Mm-hmm.
Scholastic is doing lots of comics, have lots of great work, and because of a lot of that spearheading, I think that a lot of the bigger publishers are just dabbling their fingers into it and getting comics people, or there's a new type of comics person that's coming up into the world. It's just a changing world, I think.
Yeah, no, very much so. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see, say, 10 years ago,
right,
how you could have done a book like this, even at all, Well, you know what I mean, though, right? I mean, you guys are longtime comic readers.
We tried, and I worked as a writer, like a staff writer for a publisher overseas, and I had editors there from New York that were saying, "Oh, this is never going to be a thing. Like, make sure you write it in an issue format and all that." We never really agreed, but it's changed a lot. It's for sure.
We actually submitted Rickety Stitch to a publisher in 2007, like just a pitch, maybe like 5 pages, and got shut down, turned down.
Mm-hmm.
And now there's a real hunger for books aimed at this age group.
There is.
Yeah, it's great. I really love the way that things are changing, and that you can have books like this, because this is fun and funny, and it's we call them comic books, but there's not a lot of comical stuff. It seems like, so it's really nice to have this. You guys have another question? Yeah.
How did you come up with the characters' names?
How did we come up with the characters' names? So Rickety Stitch has a very specific story in that when we created the character Skeleton Bard, we thought we want him to be a bard because a bard is a storyteller, and we like the idea of the hero being a storyteller. And then we like the idea of a skeleton because nothing is really more anonymous than a skeleton. You'd never be able to figure out who he is because there's no, he's just bones. There's no pictures around or anything. And we kept saying to each other the words lickety split to each other, and if for reasons I don't even remember or understand.
I think we were trying to come up with a name.
Yeah, we were trying to come up with a name, but we kept coming back to lickety split. And
we like the ring of it.
We love the ring of it, the cadence of the words. It just felt right. And then Rickety, he's a skeleton, and then Stitch, we kind of generated this story that in his world of Eam, the goblin word for bard is a stitch, because they stitch stories together in words and music. And so Rickety Stitch just kind of exploded from there.
And then a character like Ziggy, I remember his original name was Olaf.
Oh yeah,
for some reason.
Yeah.
This was before Frozen.
Right.
And then we wanted to make his name like a super weird incantation that you would say.
Yeah.
So Ziggly Dorgelmorken.
Ziggly Dorgelmorken is his real
He
name.
just goes by Ziggy, just to make it easy.
Regular people can't say Ziggly Dorgelmorken. But yeah, and as for the rest of them, we kind of just came up with names that we felt fit the character, fit the what wasn't on the page, like the story behind them, the myths, their own legends and things. Like Nerman Fuddle felt like a great gnome name to us.
I think we wanted to find something that sounded like Kermit.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounded sort of familiar and friendly, and how you would expect a gnome to sound and be named.
And then it took us a while to choose Zorgana for the unicorn. At first we thought it'd be funny for name, at one point she was a guy, and we thought maybe Kevin or, a regular name like Tim.
Yeah.
But then we thought, something like Xena, the warrior princess, or like a barbarian name.
Something sort of heavy metal we thought would be kind of cool, because her haircut is
it's basically Conan
the Barbarian's haircut. And we love the idea of the unicorn being like this heavy metal hero type, sword and sandal-y kind of. Yeah.
Cool. Did that answer it okay for you?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, yeah.
Why is the goo blue?
Why is the goo blue?
Just felt like a natural color. I don't know. It was like a gut instinct color, I guess.
Yeah. A little bit of goop. Blue. Blue isn't as gross as green.
I think other people might have colored them green.
Oh,
But-
yeah.
I don't really have a great explanation for why.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it also contrasts okay with Rickety's colors. Whereas if he was green, they might look like a Christmas stocking together.
Yeah.
Right.
You know?
That's funny.
Right? There's a lot of world building in here. A lot of world building. How much time did you put into that part of it? Because that's not going to be in any kind of formal script or
Right.
just sort of talking about the world or thinking about the world.
So the world building, we love it. We love the world building. That's what we do in our spare time. We have fun making the world. And for years we put out lore posts on our website, which would pinpoint something you'd see on the page, like a little image, and then we would tell a story about what that image is or why it's there or all that stuff. So we could not only flesh out the world for ourselves, but also share it.
Examples are in the back of the book.
Yeah, there are some lore posts in the back of the book.
I was just looking through the book, and I came across this. How did you come up with these little people who live in their houses made of?
It's the best question we've ever got.
How did we come up with the little people who live in houses made of poop? Well,
It was hilarious.
it was hilarious to us. It's also
Hard to answer.
yeah, it's kind of otherworldly. We wanted the forest to be an oddball place, like a strange place where is it danger or is it crazy or and so little militant creatures that live in old poop seemed like a funny. It just was funny to us.
Like we have the gnome saying, "Oh, watch out for the troll dung." He's not explaining why, and so we thought a good
And you think it's just don't step in it,
yeah.
but it's actually because
There
there's
are
some
creatures
danger.
living in it.
There's some danger associated with it.
So how much of doing a book like this is trying to entertain each other?
99,
Right.
100%. Maybe.
Yeah.
We are our own audience for
Yeah.
sure.
Is it have you had places where you've come up with something that just cracked you guys up internally, but you couldn't figure out, or you struggled with how to translate it to the page?
So my favorite moment where we wanted to pull off something that made us laugh a lot, Ben masterfully did it. It's when they're sleeping in the camp, and it goes from character to character in their sleeping pose, and Rickety Stitch is snoring, and there's a snake sliding through his skull, and it's like kind of horrifying. Right. And Ziggy looks over at him, and he's horrified by it. And I thought that was just the funniest thing in the world, and Ben masterfully put it together on the page.
Yeah.
My friend wanted me to ask why Ziggy doesn't have any clothes on.
Ziggy's not allowed to wear pants.
Yeah, he didn't grow up with pants.
Yeah. His master's sort of a mean guy. He didn't get any stuff. He didn't grow up with pants.
Spoiler alert, he does put on pants later.
He does. He earns his pants.
But yeah, he came from a life where that wasn't thought about at all.
Yeah.
There's nothing to cover up.
It's just a little imp.
Is that for entertainment as well?
No, it's more of like a character design choice.
Well, it's great that you guys are able to.
It makes him look more feral, actually, which I like.
Yeah, he's like a creature.
He makes him more creature, less character, even though he is a character, of course. Person.
Here's kind of a technical question. Some of the chapters are 30, 40 pages long. Some of the chapters are 3 pages long. What makes a chapter in your mind?
It's a good question.
Yeah, what makes a chapter in our mind? For me, I'd say like the beats of the story. It's like chapter break. That's the beat ends and a new beat begins, and we want to mark that in some way.
Like a scene change, or you come up to a satisfying conclusion of like an idea or interaction,
or a good stopping place so you can take a breath as a reader and then move on to chapter 11.
Makes sense. I think I'm out of questions. We got Stella. Yes, please.
I just want to say that I think it's extremely funny how Ziggy was saying any unicorn and they didn't eat people, but they sacrificed them to their gods. So I just think that's not very comforting.
Yeah, Ziggy is, he's got a lot of misinformation. He's living in this other world that he thinks exists, but behind the scenes, there's all these good creatures that he doesn't interact with.
Yeah, and in the world of Rickety Stitch is kind of a mean one. There's not a lot of good guys in Rickety Stitch. They're all goblins and boggarts and ogres and monsters. And so their understanding of good creatures is really different.
Yeah. When you're creating something for kids, and like you're entertaining yourselves a lot, but there's also like you don't want to sort of handhold kids. You want to kind of give them some respect to figure out the world. How have you ever done something where you that's too far, that's too scary, that's too weird, that's too anything, or is there self-censoring going on, or are you just throwing it out there and you just kind of naturally come up to that?
So when we started, I think this is a YA book. It's marketed as YA, but I think that's just our natural.
That's our groove. I think. Yeah, that's where what we fit into what we like.
Like our favorite comics are Bone and
Usagi Yojimbo.
So to be honest, we weren't really thinking about the audience when we were working on it. Now we are, but
it's great to know that the audience is so similar to ourselves and what we like. So,
and there, we're maybe a couple instances that we had to change. I don't know if I want to talk about them, but in the second book, we just ran into a thing where they're bandits and we want to make them scary. and we were discussing like what they should look like, and we both like made some sketches of our ideas, and they're like, this might be too horrifying. So
I mean, if it's scary to us, then we don't, then we knew we had to draw the concepts, and it's like, I'm terrified by this.
Anything in the editorial process where the editors are like, no, you can't do this. It's a YA book. What, are you crazy?
Yeah, there was just one instance.
Where it was too far. We edited it.
Cool. Well, thank you guys. As I said, I thought this was just a fun and funny book. I think these guys loved it a lot. I've heard from many of the other kids in the club that they liked it a lot. So I'm very much looking forward to the next one, and I'm sure you guys all are too. Yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Rickety Stitch was our book this month. Next month's book, I can tell you now, though we don't have them ready for you yet. It'll be another week before you can pick these up. But will be Glister by Andy Watson. And Andy will not be here in person because he's in England. But Andy will be joining us on a video call a month from now. I don't remember the date, but it'll be in the email. Oh, speaking of email, this reminds me. I put this out in the email. I don't know how many of you kids actually see the emails yourself, which is probably very little. You may remember that my 13-year-old son is usually here with us. Ben has actually decided that now that he's going to high school, that he does not want to co-host anymore because he's going to high school, which I understand. So I am potentially looking for a co-host. I mean, obviously I can do this myself. But if any of you or any of you out there on the internet would potentially be interested in being a co-host, let me know. Okay. It would involve reading the book ahead of time and coming up with a list of questions and asking them. It would also potentially, if we have more than one book, to read both of the books or 3 books and say, I like this one the best. This is the one that should be in the club. So if any of you guys want to be on this side of the camera, let me know. Have your parents contact me, okay? Don't contact me yourself, but have your parents contact me, and we'll talk about it, okay? So,
cool.
Yeah, right? I having a kid co-host makes this much more interesting.
That's really fun
to me. Good. Okay, so again, that was Rickety Stitch. I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank you guys for coming out.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah,
super fun.
By all means. And thank you guys all for coming out on a beautifully hot July day. We'll see you guys next month, and that's it. Take care.
Take it easy.